Islam is often perceived as a religion that revolves solely around acts of worship, such as praying 5 times a day, fasting during Ramadan, and performing Hajj. While these pillars are fundamental, Islam offers guidance on every aspect of life, including how humans should interact with the environment. The misconception that Islam does not address environmental responsibility is a significant oversight, as Islamic teachings emphasize the protection of nature, the conservation of resources, and the ethical treatment of animals. At a time when discussions about climate change, deforestation, and the extinction of species dominate global conversations, it is crucial to recognize that Islam has long advocated for the protection of the environment. The teachings of the Prophet Muhammad and the guidance of the Ahlul Bayt highlight the responsibility humans have toward preserving the world around them. These teachings go beyond basic human ethics and establish a deep-rooted connection between faith and environmental stewardship. Islam promotes a harmonious relationship between humans and nature, reminding believers that the earth is a trust given by Allah and must be cared for, rather than exploited. Environmental neglect and destruction are not new problems. While modern industrialization has intensified these issues, human mismanagement of nature existed even in the past. Islam, from its very inception, provided clear instructions on how to protect the land, water, and wildlife. The Prophet Muhammad forbade the unnecessary cutting of trees, discouraged the wastage of water, and warned against cruelty toward animals. Even in times of war, the Prophet instructed his followers not to destroy crops, poison wells, or harm livestock unnecessarily. Such teachings highlight Islam's long-standing commitment to environmental conservation and sustainability. Today, as the world grapples with deforestation, pollution, and climate crises, the wisdom found in Islamic teachings is more relevant than ever. The responsibility of caring for the environment is not just a scientific or political issue, but a deeply spiritual one. Islam does not merely suggest environmental protection, it mandates it as part of a believer's duty. Every tree planted, every resource conserved, and every animal treated with kindness is an act of faith. It is a reminder that humans are stewards of the earth, entrusted with its care, and will be held accountable for how they treat the world that has been placed under their guardianship. From the very beginning, Islam has emphasized the importance of environmental protection, long before environmental awareness became a global concern. The teachings of the Prophet Muhammad and the guidance of the Ahlul Bayt provide a clear framework for how humans should interact with the natural world. Islam's advocacy for preserving nature is not a modern adaptation, but an integral part of its core principles. It teaches that the earth and all its resources are a trust from Allah, and humanity has been appointed as its steward. This means that caring for the environment is not merely an ethical choice, but a religious obligation. The Prophet Muhammad consistently encouraged the preservation of greenery and the responsible use of natural resources. He was recorded instructing his followers not to cut down trees or destroy plants unnecessarily. His approach to nature was one of balance and sustainability. Rather than depleting the earth's resources for short-term gains, he taught his companions to plant trees, care for the land, and avoid excessive consumption. In one of his teachings, he advised that even if the day of judgment were to arrive and one had a sapling in hand, they should still plant it. This demonstrates the deep connection between faith and environmental responsibility, highlighting that every effort to preserve nature has value, regardless of circumstances. Imam Ali, known for his wisdom and justice, also displayed a profound understanding of environmental care. He would take practical steps to ensure that the land remained fertile and productive. One of his notable practices involved flipping soil, bringing fresh layers to the surface to maintain its fertility. This simple yet effective agricultural technique reflects the Islamic principle of sustainable land management. Rather than exhausting the earth's resources, he encouraged efforts to renew and nurture them. This approach starkly contrasts with the exploitative mindset that has led to modern environmental degradation. Islam's commitment to environmental preservation is not just limited to plants and land. The religion also teaches respect for all living creatures. The Prophet Muhammad warned that, on the Day of Judgment, people would be held accountable for their treatment of animals, trees, and even mountains. This sense of accountability extends beyond personal actions to include the collective impact of human activity on the environment. The idea that Allah will question people about how they treated the world around them reinforces the responsibility that believers have toward maintaining ecological balance. One of the most striking examples of Islam's environmental awareness is its teachings on water conservation. Despite the availability of abundant water sources in some regions, the Prophet forbade wastefulness. He instructed his followers to use water sparingly, even when performing religious rituals such as ablution. This guidance highlights the importance of preserving essential resources and using them responsibly. In a time when the overuse of water has led to shortages and environmental crises, these teachings serve as a timeless reminder of the value of conservation. Islam's emphasis on environmental protection was revolutionary for its time and remains deeply relevant today. At a time when environmental destruction is often justified for economic or political gains, the teachings of Islam offer a different perspective, one that views nature as a sacred trust rather than a commodity to be exploited. The responsibility to protect the environment is woven into the very fabric of Islamic teachings, demonstrating that faith and sustainability go hand in hand. Through its principles, Islam calls upon its followers to be mindful of their impact on the world, ensuring that the beauty and resources of the earth remain preserved for future generations. Islam teaches that humanity has been entrusted with the care of the earth, making environmental responsibility a fundamental duty rather than an optional act of goodwill. The Quran describes human beings as stewards or caretakers, a role that carries both privilege and accountability. This means that nature is not something to be recklessly exploited for personal gain, but rather a trust given by Allah, for which individuals and societies will be held responsible. The natural world, including plants, animals, water, and even the air, is part of a delicate balance that must be preserved to maintain harmony. When humans disrupt this balance, they cause destruction not only to the environment, but also to themselves. The Quran repeatedly reminds believers that the earth and everything within it are signs of Allah's creation. Every tree, river, mountain, and creature serves a purpose and reflects divine wisdom. Islam teaches that the beauty and resources of the world should be appreciated and safeguarded, rather than taken for granted. Just as people are responsible for their personal actions, they are equally accountable for their treatment of the environment. The Prophet Muhammad emphasized this when he said that even mountains, animals, and trees will bear witness to human actions on the Day of Judgment. This sense of accountability extends beyond individual behavior to include the collective responsibility of communities and nations in ensuring the well-being of the planet. The responsibility to protect nature is not just a spiritual concept, but a practical one embedded in Islamic teachings. The Prophet Muhammad set numerous examples in his own life that illustrate how humans should interact with the environment. He discouraged unnecessary harm to plants and animals, instructing his followers to respect the rights of all living beings. He once forbade the cutting of trees, a command that aligns with modern environmental principles of deforestation, prevention, and habitat conservation. The Prophet also stressed the importance of planting trees and taking care of them, highlighting that those who plant trees will be rewarded by Allah as long as any human or animal benefits from their shade or fruit. This establishes the idea that small acts of environmental stewardship can have long-lasting spiritual and social benefits. Islam also considers water a sacred resource that must be used responsibly. The Prophet Muhammad warned against wasting water, even if one had access to an abundant flowing river. This teaching is remarkably relevant today as the world faces increasing water shortages due to overconsumption and pollution. The Islamic approach to water conservation is not just about limiting waste, but also about ensuring that future generations have access to clean and sufficient water supplies. By using resources wisely and avoiding excess, believers fulfill their role as responsible stewards of the earth. Another significant aspect of humanity's responsibility toward nature is the treatment of animals. Islam forbids cruelty to animals and mandates kindness in their care. The Prophet Muhammad once told the story of a woman who was condemned to punishment because she had locked up a cat and deprived it of food and water. In contrast, another person was forgiven by Allah for simply offering water to a thirsty dog. These examples illustrate how deeply Islam values compassion toward all creatures, reinforcing the idea that kindness to animals is not just a moral virtue, but a requirement of faith. Islamic teachings extend beyond direct interactions with nature and also emphasize ethical conduct in broader environmental matters. The Prophet Muhammad discouraged wastefulness and excessive consumption, warning that greed and exploitation of natural resources would ultimately lead to destruction. He taught that people should take only what they need and ensure that others, including future generations, also benefit from the Earth's resources. This principle encourages sustainable living, which is increasingly important in the modern world, where overconsumption and environmental degradation threaten the planet's well-being. The responsibility of humanity toward nature is a continuous obligation, not a one-time effort. Islam teaches that each person has a role to play in maintaining ecological balance, whether through simple daily actions such as conserving water, reducing waste, and planting trees, or by advocating for policies that protect the environment on a larger scale. The teachings of Islam make it clear that the well-being of the planet is intertwined with the well-being of humanity. When nature thrives, societies prosper, and when it suffers, people experience the consequences in the form of natural disasters, climate change, and resource scarcity. Ultimately, Islam calls upon believers to embrace their role as caretakers of the earth with sincerity and dedication. The Quran, the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, and the examples set by early Islamic leaders all reinforce the message that protecting the environment is not an optional good deed, but an essential part of faith. Whether it is through acts of conservation, responsible consumption, or compassion toward animals, every effort to preserve the natural world is a fulfillment of the trust that Allah has placed in humanity. Recognizing this responsibility and acting upon it ensures that future generations inherit a world that is not only habitable, but also reflective of the beauty and balance that Allah intended. Islam places strong emphasis on the protection of the environment and prohibits its destruction in any form. The teachings of the Prophet Muhammad and the guidance found in the Quran establish clear boundaries regarding how humans should interact with nature. The reckless destruction of natural resources, whether through deforestation, pollution, or the poisoning of land and water, is strictly discouraged. Islam does not view nature as something to be used and discarded, but rather as a trust from Allah that must be cared for with responsibility and respect. Any act that harms the environment is not only a violation of this trust, but also an injustice to future generations who depend on the same natural resources. One of the clearest examples of Islam's stance on environmental destruction comes from the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad regarding war. Even in times of conflict, when survival and strategy were paramount, he forbade his followers from cutting down trees, destroying crops, or contaminating water sources. These rules were revolutionary for their time, as warfare in many societies often involved the complete devastation of enemy lands. The Prophet's command that armies should not harm the environment, even in battle, illustrates the deep ethical responsibility that Islam places on human interactions with nature. This principle remains relevant today, as many modern conflicts lead to environmental destruction, displacing communities and making lands uninhabitable for years. The prohibition against environmental destruction extends beyond war and applies to everyday life. The Prophet Muhammad discouraged wastefulness in all forms, whether it be water, food, or material goods. He once reprimanded a companion for using excessive water during ablution, even though water was abundant. This principle teaches that resources should not be taken for granted or misused, no matter how plentiful they may seem. The concept of moderation and mindful consumption is central to Islamic teachings, ensuring that resources remain available for all living beings. Islam also strongly discourages pollution, whether it affects the land, water, or air. The Prophet instructed his followers not to relieve themselves near rivers, canals, or public pathways, as this would cause harm to others and pollute the environment. This was a clear example of early environmental awareness, emphasizing the importance of maintaining clean and healthy surroundings. The idea that cleanliness is half of faith is not limited to personal hygiene, but extends to the cleanliness of the environment as well. Keeping water sources pure, disposing of waste properly, and preventing pollution are all part of the ethical responsibilities that Islam demands from its followers. The teachings of Imam Ali further reinforce the idea that humans will be held accountable for their treatment of the environment. He stated that on the Day of Judgment, people would be asked about the mountains, trees, and animals under their care. This perspective elevates environmental responsibility from a mere ethical concern to a spiritual duty. The idea that every tree cut down, every river polluted, and every animal harmed will be a matter of questioning on the final day serves as a powerful reminder to treat the natural world with respect and caution. Islam teaches that nature is not lifeless, but rather part of a divine system that must be maintained and protected. One of the most harmful forms of environmental destruction today is industrial pollution, which contaminates water, air, and soil, affecting millions of people and countless ecosystems. The exploitation of land and deforestation for economic gain has led to the loss of biodiversity and the destruction of natural habitats. Islam's teachings directly oppose such reckless actions, advocating for a balanced and sustainable approach to development. The Quran repeatedly warns against corruption on earth and urges believers to act as caretakers rather than exploiters of natural resources. The destruction of the environment is seen as a form of corruption that disrupts the balance that Allah has established. The idea of sustainability is embedded in Islamic teachings. Rather than depleting natural resources for temporary benefits, Islam encourages long-term stewardship. The Prophet Muhammad himself practiced sustainable habits, such as planting trees and ensuring that even the seeds from dates were not wasted but instead placed into the ground to grow into new plants. The act of planting trees is considered an ongoing charity in Islam, meaning that every time a tree provides shade, fruit, or oxygen, the one who planted it continues to receive spiritual rewards. This reflects the principle that human actions toward nature should be constructive rather than destructive. The prohibition against environmental destruction is not just a moral lesson, but a divine directive with serious consequences. Islam warns that when humans abuse the environment, they bring harm not only to themselves, but to future generations as well. The depletion of natural resources, the extinction of species, and the pollution of the earth are all forms of wrongdoing that contradict the responsibility given to humanity. Recognizing the sacredness of nature and acting as responsible stewards is an essential part of faith, reminding believers that they are not owners of the earth, but temporary caretakers entrusted with its well-being. Islam places great emphasis on cleanliness, not only in personal hygiene, but also in maintaining a clean and healthy environment. The teachings of the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad stress the importance of purity, not just in worship, but in everyday life. Cleanliness is considered a fundamental part of faith, reflecting a person's discipline, responsibility, and respect for the world around them. This principle extends beyond individual cleanliness to include the surroundings in which people live, work, and interact. The idea that a believer should strive for purity in both body and environment reinforces the connection between spiritual well-being and environmental responsibility. The Prophet Muhammad provided specific guidance on how to maintain environmental cleanliness, particularly in public spaces. He instructed his followers to avoid polluting water sources, ensuring that rivers, wells, and lakes remained clean for both human and animal use. He warned against relieving oneself near water sources, public roads, and shaded areas where people gathered, as such actions would cause harm to others. This level of consideration for shared spaces reflects the deep sense of community and responsibility Islam instills in its followers. By keeping common areas clean, people contribute to a healthier and more harmonious society. Islamic teachings also discourage wastefulness, which is closely linked to environmental hygiene. The Prophet Muhammad advised moderation in the use of resources, whether it be food, water, or material goods. He once reprimanded a companion for using excessive water during ablution, even though water was plentiful. This lesson extends beyond religious rituals to everyday habits, encouraging people to be mindful of their consumption and to avoid unnecessary waste. The excessive use of resources not only harms the environment, but also disrupts the balance that Allah has created. Islam promotes sustainability by advocating for responsible consumption and mindful use of natural blessings. The cleanliness of public spaces, homes, and streets is another important aspect of environmental protection in Islam. The Prophet Muhammad encouraged people to remove harmful objects from pathways, considering it an act of charity. This simple yet profound teaching highlights the role of individuals in maintaining a clean and safe environment for everyone. Proper waste disposal and keeping public spaces free from litter align with this principle, demonstrating that small acts of cleanliness contribute to the well-being of society. In a modern context, this translates into responsible waste management, recycling, and efforts to reduce pollution. Beyond physical cleanliness, Islam also teaches the importance of maintaining the purity of the air and land. The Prophet discouraged burning harmful substances that could pollute the air, emphasizing the need to protect the atmosphere from contamination. Similarly, he instructed his followers to respect green spaces and avoid actions that would harm the land. These teachings are especially relevant today, as air pollution, deforestation, and industrial waste pose significant threats to the environment. By following these principles, believers can play an active role in preserving the planet for future generations. Islam's emphasis on cleanliness and hygiene serves as a reminder that protecting the environment is an essential part of faith. The guidance provided by the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad encourages a lifestyle that prioritizes purity, responsibility, and sustainability. By maintaining clean surroundings, avoiding wastefulness, and respecting natural resources, individuals contribute to a healthier and more balanced world. These teachings highlight the profound connection between faith and environmental care, reinforcing the idea that cleanliness is not just a personal virtue, but a communal and spiritual duty. Water holds a special place in Islam, not only as a vital resource for survival, but also as a symbol of purity and renewal. The Quran describes water as a gift from Allah, essential for sustaining life, and repeatedly reminds believers to appreciate and protect this blessing. Islam emphasizes that water is not to be taken for granted, nor should it be wasted, regardless of how abundant it may seem. The responsible use of water is deeply ingrained in Islamic teachings, guiding believers to practice conservation in their daily lives. The Prophet Muhammad demonstrated a strong commitment to water conservation and discouraged wastefulness even in acts of worship. He once observed a companion using excessive water while performing ablution and instructed him to use only what was necessary. When the companion questioned whether wastefulness could apply to water even when performing religious duties, the Prophet firmly responded that waste is forbidden, even if one is near a flowing river. This profound teaching highlights the principle that natural resources, no matter how plentiful, should never be misused or taken lightly. Islamic teachings also stress the importance of keeping water sources clean and unpolluted. The Prophet forbade urinating in still or running water, recognizing that contamination could harm both humans and animals. This early guidance aligns with modern concerns about water pollution and its consequences on ecosystems and public health. By maintaining the cleanliness of rivers, lakes, and wells, believers uphold their duty as caretakers of the earth, ensuring that water remains safe and available for future generations. Beyond personal consumption, Islam also promotes responsible water use in agriculture and daily activities. The Prophet encouraged mindful irrigation practices, ensuring that water was not wasted when tending to crops. He also advised against excessive consumption, warning that greed and disregard for resources could lead to hardship. These teachings reflect a sustainability-focused mindset, encouraging people to balance their needs with the long-term well-being of the environment. The concept of moderation in Islam extends to all aspects of life, including water usage. Believers are encouraged to use only what is necessary and to avoid habits that contribute to unnecessary depletion. This principle is particularly relevant today, as many regions around the world face severe water shortages due to overuse, pollution, and climate change. The teachings of Islam provide a timeless reminder that conservation is not just a practical necessity, but also a spiritual responsibility. Water conservation in Islam is not merely a recommendation, but an obligation rooted in faith. The Prophet's example, along with Quranic guidance, reinforces the idea that preserving water is a duty that reflects gratitude and awareness of the blessings provided by Allah. By practicing moderation, protecting water sources, and recognizing the value of every drop, believers contribute to a more sustainable and just world. These teachings serve as a guiding principle for modern society, where responsible water management is crucial to the survival and well-being of all living beings. Islam places great emphasis on moderation and discourages wastefulness in all aspects of life. The Quran repeatedly warns against extravagance, reminding believers that those who waste are the companions of Satan. This strong language reflects the seriousness with which Islam views the careless use of resources. Everything on earth has been created with balance and purpose, and human beings are entrusted with the responsibility of maintaining this balance. The overconsumption of food, water, and materials leads not only to environmental harm, but also to social injustice, as excessive use by some often results in scarcity for others. The Prophet Muhammad embodied the principle of sustainability in his daily life, always using resources wisely and encouraging his followers to do the same. He warned against wasting food and would remind people to eat only what was necessary, emphasizing that any excess should be shared rather than discarded. He once saw children picking fruit from a tree and throwing away half-eaten pieces, and he corrected them, urging them not to waste what could still be eaten. This teaching extends beyond food and applies to all resources, highlighting the idea that nothing should be discarded when it can still serve a purpose. Imam Sadiq reinforced this principle by stating that even pouring out the remaining half of a cup of water is an act of waste. He also described throwing away a seed as a form of excess, encouraging people instead to plant it so that it could grow into a tree. This mindset of reusing and repurposing aligns with modern sustainability efforts, where reducing waste, recycling, and planting trees are seen as essential steps toward protecting the planet. Islam's teachings in this regard are timeless, providing guidance that is increasingly relevant in today's world of mass consumption and environmental degradation. Beyond individual habits, Islam also promotes sustainability in broader societal practices. The Prophet Muhammad discouraged excessive use of natural resources and emphasized that people should take only what they need, ensuring that others can benefit as well. He taught that wealth, food, and water should be distributed fairly, and that those who hoard or waste resources contribute to inequality and hardship. The Islamic approach to sustainability is not just about conserving materials, but about creating a just and balanced society where all people have access to the essentials of life. The consequences of wastefulness can be seen today in the depletion of natural resources, the pollution of land and water, and the growing impact of climate change. Islam's guidance on sustainability serves as a reminder that human actions have long-term effects and that taking care of the earth is a responsibility, not an option. The principles of moderation, gratitude, and mindful consumption provide a framework for living in a way that respects both nature and future generations. By avoiding waste and embracing sustainability, individuals fulfill their role as caretakers of the earth, ensuring that its blessings continue to benefit all living beings. Islam's teachings on environmental responsibility are deeply rooted in the understanding that the earth is a trust given to humanity by Allah. Every natural resource, every living creature, and every aspect of the environment has been created with purpose and balance. As caretakers of this world, humans have an obligation to protect it, ensuring that their actions do not lead to harm or destruction. This responsibility extends beyond personal benefit, encompassing a broader duty to future generations who will inherit the planet. The Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad consistently emphasize the importance of respecting nature, conserving resources, and maintaining the delicate equilibrium that sustains life. The evidence of Islamic environmental consciousness is clear in the way the Prophet Muhammad and his companions lived their lives. He forbade the unnecessary cutting of trees, discouraged wastefulness in food and water, and advocated for cleanliness in both public and private spaces. He taught that even small actions, such as planting a tree or conserving water, carry great spiritual significance. These teachings are not merely historical guidelines, but practical principles that hold relevance today. As the world faces increasing environmental crises, including climate change, deforestation, and pollution, the wisdom found in Islamic teachings provides valuable insights into how humanity should respond. Every individual has a role to play in preserving the environment, and small actions can lead to significant change. Planting trees, reducing waste, conserving water, and showing kindness to animals are all ways in which believers can align their actions with Islamic principles. Environmental stewardship is not limited to large-scale initiatives or governmental policies. It begins with everyday choices made by individuals and communities. The simple act of being mindful of consumption, reducing waste, and ensuring cleanliness in public spaces is a reflection of faith and devotion to Allah's creation. Beyond personal efforts, there is a need for collective action. Communities should work together to promote sustainable practices, advocate for policies that protect natural resources, and educate others on the importance of environmental responsibility. Mosques, schools, and Islamic organizations can play a vital role in spreading awareness and implementing environmentally friendly initiatives. Encouraging sustainable practices within families and local communities can create a ripple effect, inspiring larger societal change. The call to action is clear. Protecting the environment is not an optional act of charity, but an essential duty that aligns with faith. Islam teaches that every deed, no matter how small, is recorded and will be accounted for. Caring for the earth is a form of worship, a way of expressing gratitude for the blessings that Allah has provided. By embracing the responsibility of environmental stewardship, believers fulfill an important aspect of their faith, ensuring that the world remains a place of beauty and abundance for future generations. The time to act is now, with the understanding that each step taken towards sustainability and conservation brings humanity closer to fulfilling its divine trust. If you found this discussion insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Islamic Insights for more knowledge and wisdom rooted in the teachings of Islam. Let's continue to learn, reflect, and take action to protect the blessings Allah has given us. Until next time, stay inspired and stay connected to your faith.